afternoon. Welcome, everyone, to a new episode of the Gentlemensdialogue. We'll be talking about some pretty interesting things today and going forward on every single one of our episodes. We're going to hit you with things that cover subject matter from A to Z. And today, we'll break into something. This is just impromptu. We didn't sit down and write down anything. And, this is we don't need a ghostwriter. We just go with the flow. This is straight freestyling off the top of our heads, just talking about some things that can be of interest to, at least a handful of people, I'm sure. And I was talking to some buddies last night, man, and the conversation from last night kind of pushed me to want to have a conversation with the larger mass of people to kind of see how people were thinking. And so I called up my right hand man Solomon and said, "Yo, Solo, man, let's sit and let's discuss some things." And he's sitting right across from me. And we're going to, we're just going to chop it up and just have a normal conversation. And, and that's, at the end of the day, that's what a podcast is. We're not a news station, it's not a gossip station. It's just having a conversation, and we're just recording it for people to be able to hear. But at the end of the day, I was talking to a couple buddies last night, and one of my guys, he made a comment last night. He said, that he wasn't, out of the blue, he just wasn't happy, and I'm thinking, I'm like, well, it's, that's my boy, and I want to know, what do you mean you're not happy? You're not happy, is it the job? Is it life? I mean, what are you not happy with? And he said, at the end of the day, he's no longer happy with his marriage. So I was like, well, can you give us a few details without giving us too many details? We're your boy. We want to help you kind of figure this out. You guys, on the outside appear to have a really, really solid marriage. We've all been friends for many years. And, he said, in his relationship right now, he and his wife, they've been together over 20 years. And he said that he feels like she's reached a point where she has become so complacent with what he has done in the relationship that she no longer does what she needs to do to keep him happy. And so, we were, kind of discussing that. So, well, what are we talking? We talking sexually? I mean, let's be specific when we're having conversations. That's the best way to be able to get to the bottom of things, to really kind of help to solve issues. When especially when it's your boy, your brother. You want to be able to give him the best advice, especially if they come to you. Not everybody's asking for your advice, but in this case, he was asking for advice, and he said, he says, man, I wake up every morning, man. He said, I've done this for years, man. He said, I wake up every single morning before my wife. He says, I get up, he said, and when I make breakfast for myself in the morning, he said, I make her breakfast. He said, I pack her lunch. He said, I even ask her, hey, what are you wearing this week? He says, I even get her clothes ready for the whole week for work, because I do mine as well as our sons. So everybody, the clothes, there's nothing that she really has to do. He goes, hey, my son, he plays he plays every sport known to man. So, I'm always, washing uniforms. And so, why just wash his uniforms? He said, I wash all the clothes. He said, I clean the house, because, he makes a mess, and I'm behind him trying to teach him how to be clean as well. But I look back, and he says, I look sometimes, and he says, I'm wondering why I'm feeling the way that I'm feeling now. He says, now I used to do things at home and I felt happy about doing it. He goes, but now I do it and it feels like a chore. It's no longer pleasurable for me to do for my wife, because I feel like she takes everything that I do for granted. She used to clean up. She doesn't clean up anymore. And it's like, well, maybe because you clean up, and, that's why, She stopped cleaning up, and he was like, I don't care if I clean up every hour on the hour. At the end of the day, we both work. I get it. When my son was, he said when his son was a baby, he says, hey, I get it. She's working. She would pick him up from daycare a couple days a week. I would pick him up a couple days, and we kind of alternate drop off, pick up. So she's not doing this by herself. And he said, but I also understood about postpartum depression. Women, after they have a baby, a lot of them, a lot of times women, they don't feel as attractive, and a lot of other things go on that men just don't understand. And I'll never, and I'm never trying to dive into that pool to try to understand it in terms of, to the point where I feel like I know more than the woman knows that's going through it. In other words, I do want to know, how it affects her, and what can I do to make it easier for you? What can I do? He says, but, at the end of the day, he goes, even, now he said, even when it comes to their sex life, he says, it's really hard for me to want to make love to somebody that I feel angry at, because I feel like you're not doing what I think you should be doing, especially after we've had conversations about this. So, he said, I forgot to mention that this isn't something I'm just telling you guys, and she doesn't know how I feel. I've told her exactly how I feel about this. And the first thing she screams is, hey, well, maybe we should go to counseling. And he goes, yeah, I'm not anti-counseling, but he was saying, we don't need a counselor for you to start helping me to clean up. We don't need a counselor for you to start, at least every now and then wash the clothes. He goes, he said, man, I take care of the inside of the house. I take care of the outside of the house. He said, I take care of our cars. I keep them maintenance. I keep them cleaned. And he says, I'm looking up and I'm like, well, what exactly is my wife having to do? And he said that the more he thinks about that, the more frustrated he gets, because she's not really, she's not carrying the load at all. And he says, as a man, yeah, it's my job to carry the heavy load. I should have enough. My baggage should have enough room for me to put her baggage in and mine, and I can carry it at all. He goes, but at some point in time, men get tired, and when you get tired, you need to be able to take a break. He says, I'm used to, when we were first married, he said, I'm used to her when, we go out for dinner. He goes, I always pay, and that's just what I do. That's just me. He goes, but every now and then, he says, you think about it. He goes, women don't really understand how it makes a man feel. Like if we go out to dinner, we've been married, this many years, and that means I've probably paid for 5,000 dinners, but it's okay. He goes, it's not a problem. I'm not complaining about that. But at least every now and then, when the bill comes, it would be nice just to see you reach for your purse to say, you know what, baby, I got this. He goes, I'm not going to let you pay anyway. But the fact that I saw you make the attempt to pay, he goes, that makes me feel like, you know what? She has my back. And so, that's what we discussed, and at the end of the day, we couldn't really give, stuff like that. You don't really like to give advice. I think this was a situation where it was more so he needed to release. He needed to get it out. But in terms of how men are, he says, I come home and I have a rough day at work. She has some rough days. He goes, but I always make the time to find out how my wife's day was. We're so into, woman asks you, hey, how was your day? We just say, oh, it's all right. We don't go into details. When we ask women, how was your day? Of course, first thing she says, oh, I got in the car. I wasted my tea wasted in the middle of the console, and I got a run in my stockings. And then by the time I even got out the subdivision, my phone was ringing, my boss was calling. And then when I got to work, Mary and Susan, I don't get along with them, but they had to come in my office and disturb me and bother me most of the day. And then I'm trying to get ready to go to lunch. And then when I'm getting ready to go to lunch, my manager called me into the office for a 2-hour meeting. And I'm looking at her like, I was getting ready to go to lunch. But of course, by the time I get out of there, it's 3:00. So there's no need for me to have lunch. So I figured, okay, well, when I get home, I'll just wait until I get home to have dinner. And then she goes into more details. He says, look, she gave me details for a whole hour. So I get it. He goes, but sometimes I want to be able to talk that way and not feel rushed and interrupted, because sometimes I want to go into details too, not necessarily just about job, but just about life. And he said, the lines of communication are no longer as open as they used to be. And it's frustrating me to the point. And he says, the biggest part that's making me the most nervous about all of this right now that I'm going through with my wife is the fact that now when at work, he says, I've been on, he was talking about, he's been on his job for a long time. So, and most of the people there have been there for a long time. But he said, I have a couple of coworkers. He said, and one specific, coworker, he says, we work together quite a bit. And he says, and she, a really attractive woman, he says, again, we work on projects together, been working together over 10 years. She knows my family. I know her family. We have outings with the company, with dinner parties, Christmas parties, that sort of thing. So we all know each other. And he said, it bothered me because last week, I'm sitting in my office and she knocked on the door and said, hey, you got a minute? I said, sure. And she said, well, she said, I have a question for you. I said, what's going on? And she said, I've known you, for quite some time now. And you haven't really been yourself for the last few months. Is everything okay? Are you okay? Is, something going on at the job, something going on at home, but you used to come in every morning, and you were really the sunshine in our office. And we all talk about that. You came in and we knew when you were here, and we knew more so when you weren't here, because you're just that guy. You speak to everybody, you say hello, you have conversation with everybody. But the last few weeks or so, you just have been someone different. And, hey, just want to let you know, if something's going on, you need to talk about it. Hey, I'm here to talk about it. And I said, hey, everything's good. I appreciate it. And he was like, I really, really do. But no, everything's good. It's whatever it is, it'll work itself out. He said, but as soon as she left his office, he started, his brain started just running, because he wanted to know how could someone that he only worked with a few hours out of the day recognize that something was going on, and the woman that is up under the roof with him every single day has no clue that there's a problem. And so he said, hey, I started thinking, and he said, this I think is probably one of the factors. And he said, this is a two-way street, it works with men as well as women, but it's a two-way street. He goes, but this is how a man's mind gets to racing in terms of, man, she noticed that. And now you start thinking, well, man, she seems to know me better than my own wife. So now this same coworker or whoever, I'm just using, the coworker as an example because he used the coworker as an example, but at the same time, whether it's a coworker or not, but that woman that somewhat knows you, maybe just via friendship or, whether it's at work or, whatever, but that woman that, decides to kind of dig in to figure out what's going on with you because she recognizes that opens the door for infidelity. Because you start looking at this woman and now you're like, wow, this is what I miss at home. This woman is asking me what's going on, and she knows that something is wrong, something is not going right, and you see this. And at the same time, when you have those women that are out there, this is what, we were the feedback we kind of gave him, you got women that are out there. We got some women who are all they want to, they love married men. That's all they want to deal with. But then you also have some other women who, they're not out there. They don't leave their house saying, I want to go cheat. I want to go mess with a married man. Sometimes a woman just gets attracted to a man. She may not even know you're married. But all of a sudden, whether it's via casual conversation at work, casual conversation, wherever, but all of a sudden, you realize that this woman that, you're talking to or communicating with, you get a different feeling when you're talking to her. You feel like stress is being released. You can talk to her about anything and she listens. So then you start looking at this woman quite differently, because now it just comes from a casual conversation to, hey, you want to go out for drinks after work? Sure. Let's go out and let's go have some drinks. You're stressed out. You need to get out anyway. Come on, let's go have some drinks. Then it goes from, hey, next Friday, hey, you want to go out for dinner? Go out to dinner after work? Now you're building this friendship with this person who listens to you. They may not say a word. They allow you to get it out, whatever is bothering you. And then when you get home, now you start saying, man, why does my wife not do this? Why don't I feel this way with my wife or my significant other? But here's a total stranger that doesn't really know me at all, and they understand that I am not myself. So now you start kind of gravitating to this person because it feels good to be able to talk and discuss things that are bothering you. So now you start looking for this person. You call this person up. Hey, what you doing? What you doing tomorrow? Hey, I got to get some stuff off my chest. You feel like sitting down? Can we go have a drink? Then it goes from that to, hey, well, you know what? If you want, after we go for drinks, hey, we can go to my house. Week later, month later, whatever, 3 months later, you're sleeping with this woman. And again, this woman did not come out to intentionally mess with this married man. But this woman, as most people would call the side chick, the side chick did what? She offered this man something that he was not getting at home. And we're not talking about the sex. We're talking about the support, the emotional support that sometimes you're missing at home. And I think it's different when you've communicated this to your significant other and they simply do not take heed to what you're saying. Well, it goes from that to, okay, well, I tried to talk to you, but you never wanted to talk to me. And again, a lot of times we see this with women when it comes to men. They want to talk and the man's closed up, but it also happens on the other side where it's the man that is he's yelling out for help. He's screaming for help, but you don't hear his cries. And all of a sudden this side chick hears his cries. And this is the side chick that rubs his back and strokes the back of his head and tells him, hey, everything's going to be okay. And then they even offer solutions sometimes to your issues. How do you not get yourself in that situation when home isn't working the way that it should be working? So, hey, Solo, man, if you have any thoughts, man, chime in. I was just trying to lay the foundation about a conversation that I had. And because, hey, I have friends, maybe one or two friends may know who I'm talking about, but my other friends, no one would know who this person is. And this is why I chose to speak freely about the conversation that we had. And of course, I would never, ever use any names or, give any information that would be able to give the person's identity. But I did want to at least, bring this out because I think it's a conversation that people should have, and it's a conversation that we should all have together. The people that are listening, we'd like to know, hey, well, what are your thoughts? And again, not so much to get all these thoughts and then give my buddy some advice, but I can tell him, hey man, look, I threw this out there, to ask, people, and maybe there's a solution out there that you could try that will keep you guys from heading in the wrong direction. Because right now, when he left my house yesterday, the only thing I could think about was they're going to get a divorce. And I don't want to see that. He doesn't want to see that. He said that he is going to take some time. They're gonna get away this weekend. He's already invited her. Hey, let's go up to the cabins. His brother is gonna keep the son. And he says, I know she thinks he's like, she's probably thinking that this is just a getaway, but it's not just a getaway. He said it's more so a way for me to be able to talk to her in a different environment outside of our house, outside of common ground. I wanted to be on neutral ground, bring these things up, and I want to see what her thoughts are. He said, and based on this conversation, it's going to determine which direction he goes. So, hey, Solo, what are some things you think that he should do, or some things that he should say? How can he approach her? What does he talk about first? Maybe what should he not talk about? Because, you don't want something like this to turn into, you want it to be a learning experience. You don't want it to turn into a not necessarily an argument, but you don't want it to seem as if, hey, look, I'm not happy and I don't want to be with you anymore. You don't want it to be received that way. So what are some approaches you think he can take to, at least reach her in a way that she'd be willing to talk and not take offense to what he has to say?
Well, yeah, I definitely say the biggest thing is speaking to her in a language that she understands. And what I mean by that is, one of the main complications of relationships is the communication, because it's such a it sounds small. It's a lot more complicated than it comes off, because when you think communication, it's like, oh yeah, just talk to him. But you have to, when you want to communicate effectively, especially in a situation like this, you definitely want to make sure that you communicate in the right way. Because with people, it's almost like communicating with, not to compare the two in this situation, but just for an example, like when you communicate with your children or a small child in general, if you have to know what they hear and what they don't, and what works for them. Because some people, just talking in a calm voice will definitely get them to understand where you're coming from, but everybody doesn't understand that. They don't really hear things the way that you say it if you're not saying it a certain way. So I'd say the biggest thing is the way that, as long as they've been together, I'm pretty sure he knows how to speak to her in a way that it'll get through and understand. I definitely think that the weekend idea, that's the way I see it, it's like a reset button, because with everything that he's going through, sometimes we get caught up in our routines and our patterns, and we may miss a few things. We get so focused on the big picture and the whole puzzle, so to speak, and we miss a piece or two and things fall behind. But definitely the communication would be the number one thing. And what I mean is to communicate in a way that she understands, because, like you said a second ago, Steve, if you say something, you don't want to start off the conversation and then they immediately get defensive because they think that you're trying to attack them, and that's not the case. It's just, you have something that needs to be said, and you just want to make sure that you say it in a way that they understand. And a lot of people, relationships and marriages, they intertwine with each other. And